on this morning. You'll be all right. They tell us never to begin with good morning. That's what they say in seminary. But y'all, it is a good morning, and I am so grateful to be back with you today after some time resting and learning. It's amazing what a little time off can do for our spirits and perspective, and I hope all of you have the benefit of that discovery as often as you need it, or at least once in a while. Part of my time away included study leave at the Chautauqua Institute in Western New York, a place my family has loved for decades and fills my cup annually. One of this year's visiting ministers was Father Greg Boyle, a Jesuit priest from Los Angeles who founded and continues to run the largest gang intervention and rehabilitation program in the country, serving about 10,000 men and women every year as they decide to change their lives and their communities. Father Boyle is a social justice warrior, a mover and a shaker. He is a human who gets important things done. He deserves a plethora of gold stars. Knowing of his commitment and contribution, I always attend when he speaks, and if I miss the day, I look for it online. Thank you, Internet. He is inspiring, warm, funny, and just holy in that weird way that some people are sometimes. Even on my most atheistic days, I see God in Father Boyle, and I listen to what he has to say. And just when I expected Father Boyle to tell me to dig deeper and get more busy, this year he held out a different challenge. And that challenge depended on the story that Susan read from the book of Mark, from the Greek scriptures, the Gospels of the Christian Bible. The book of Mark is widely viewed as the earliest written of the testaments about the life of Jesus Christ. And it's also seen as the book that makes storytelling, both by Jesus in the form of parables and by the gospel writers, the key form for establishing the basis of this faith tradition. The story of Jesus stilling the waters is one of several parables in a row offered in this chapter of Mark to demonstrate Jesus's power to establish his identity. Imagine having to still stormy waters to establish your identity. That's another sermon. Affirming him as a divine being and to instruct both the disciples and the followers they hoped to gain on the importance of faith, both in Jesus and in the rightness of their path in serving him. Father Boyle held up this moment of stillness as a moment of connection. Jesus rises from sleep, and in response to the fear of the disciples, he creates stillness in the sea. I want you to imagine this with me for a minute because it's really quite powerful, even if you've not been in a boating accident. Imagine you're in a boat with a bunch of dedicated folks who have been working pretty hard, and you're headed out to continue that work, but get caught in a storm. This is not a yacht that they're on. It's not a cruise ship. It's not even a modern sailboat with a carefully balanced hull. I imagine we're talking kind of rudimentary on the boat front. These folks are not Vikings. They are a mixed group of carpenter, fishermen, and a tax collector. While the fishermen might have had experience on rough seas, they were surrounded by folks who didn't. They were afraid. So Jesus, after they let him know what's going on, he slows everything down in that moment. He pulls them out of the chaos. And then asks them why they are scared. He literally provides stillness in the face of chaos, but he doesn't stop there. He inhabits that stillness by creating a connection with the disciples. He asks them why they are afraid. What has happened to you? He reminds them that they are okay, that he's got them, that they are on the right path. He creates connection, and that, Father Boyle pointed out, was love. God's love in a human moment, in stillness that a mindful person can create for themselves and others. And I think this is so good, so important. Sometimes we can best love people by trying to create that moment of stillness with them when they are facing a storm, reminding them to catch their literal or metaphorical breath, offering to sit with them for a minute, asking a question that will connect them to this moment, this place, this here, this now, and out of the tumult of uncertainty that can overpower us from time to time, to time, to time. We can create stillness as an act of love, as a holy space for connection and healing or repair. Yes, 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 yes. This idea was reinforced in a talk I heard by the Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi, the president and CEO of the Dalai Lama Center for Ethics and Transformative Values at MIT. I didn't know MIT had that. It's pretty cool. He encouraged listeners to a contemplative life, regardless of the fast pace of our culture. He quoted Indian philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti, who reminded us that it is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Stepping out of our norms, the storms of society, and perhaps even problems of our own making into stillness and peace is undoubtedly a worthwhile endeavor, and one that we resist, as the disciples did. They got the stillness and then they said, "Wow, he is so scary." I'm in touch with that. I have an opportunity to be still, and I have found something else to stir my spirit in a way that's not helpful to me. Living in and from greater internal peace certainly feels better. As someone who spent a fair amount of time seeking stillness in a variety of ways, I can testify to the positive impact time in intentional peace has for me, whether I'm extending that stillness to another person or not. And you had to know we were going to turn a corner here at some point, right? I'm thinking about that boat on the still water. I'm thinking about what happened after Jesus stilled the water. If we look back at that ancient text, the connection that Jesus makes with the disciples, the lesson that he gives about faith, is the end of the chapter. We end with the importance of faith. And that is a reasonable place for a story that's written to spread and shore up a new religion to end for the moment. It's fair. But if we go back to the introduction before the parables, of which the stilling the water story is but one, the news is that Jesus was in the boat to teach, to address crowds on the shore, to continue the work that he thought was important for the future disposition of those facing the end of the world. We've got stuff to do, so let me calm you down. That's my modern translation. I'll be selling a very short New Testament soon. In other words, stillness is not the end. Stillness may well be a moment of profound connection with another human, with compassion, with self-love, and/or with the divine, but it is not the end. It is not the resting place. After Jesus stilled the water and connected with the disciples, if we are to infer from the texts that follow, the disciples continued with their missions. The disciples continued on with the work, whether you agree with their specific version of what the work would be or not, of making the world a better place. They continued with their message that they thought would save people. They didn't just sit in the boat and feel better. I'm struck in this moment by how very often I receive the message that there is still, in this day and age, only one way to, okay, I'm going to call it salvation, but know that I'm speaking very broadly and metaphorically here. I'm daily encouraged to greater social justice involvement as the way to save the world. Reminded that my privilege comes with additional responsibility, that the world is falling apart and needs me and anyone else I can recruit, cajole, bring along for the ride. This should be my only focus and my chief concern. Daily, in my inbox, I am daily reminded that we are out of time with the climate, that Herculean efforts are necessary in every moment to assure our very survival. This should be my only focus and my chief concern. It is shown to me at least twice a day when I choose to tune into the news that my efforts to date and those of everyone I admire have not yet been enough. We have failed in making our social problems our chief focus and only concern. I am, conversely, told that seeking peace and cultivating a peaceful heart is the only way to make real change within the locus of control that we actually have. There is a practical beauty to the suggestion, and it comes across like a soft blanket, or maybe even a soft blanket fort, where I can hole up and learn to feel better. These are just a few of the singular paths suggested to well-meaning people as the way. I'm sure you can think of plenty of others. And I know that maybe I'm part of the cacophony of attention demand that tugs at your sleeve. I know that my calls to action may feel like the one true way when I deliver them with conviction and vigor. But let's take a moment this morning to think about what's likely true. It's likely true that most people cannot grind it out all day, every day. It's likely true that even doing the good work can be frustrating, disheartening, exhausting, and heartbreaking. It's likely true that even if today everyone on the planet commits to seeking greater peace within themselves, it will take a long time for those ripples to fix urgent problems that are hurting people today. So maybe the question isn't the right single way. Maybe the wisdom in the long view is about balance. If we focus on balance, we just might be able to not only make our efforts last as long as they likely need to, but also make clear decisions from a place of internal quiet rather than chaos. I say all of this like it's obvious, and for those of you my age or older, maybe it is. But the thing is that having the wisdom, knowing a thing to be true, doesn't make it easy to actually do. Navigating life such that we are living our values in the world and staying connected to the quiet hum of our own hearts and maybe the larger divinity. Yeah, when you say it that way, it's more clear that this is not an easy task. Balance is never easy. Just ask Simone Biles, one of the most decorated gymnasts in the world, maybe even in the history of the sport. I didn't check that. Having already taken a few medals when competing on the balance beam with a routine that was technically more difficult than any competitor, Biles faltered. She fell off. Fortunately, without injury, which is amazing, but to a score loss that decided the event's outcome. Here's the thing, y'all. The balance beam is only 4 inches wide. 4 inches. That's 1/3 of 1 foot. Less than half the width of a piece of notebook paper. Shorter than the height of my cell phone, and just a little longer than my longest finger. And no, I will not hold it up to demonstrate. Staying on the balance beam requires internal strength, discipline, and shed loads of practice, knowing when to look and when to trust the blind landing. Staying in balance also requires the kind of presence in the moment that allows one to make adjustments. If we're willing to give up on simplistic formulations of the best way, the only way, and to recognize our own humanity and our needs over the long haul, we have to be present to the task at hand, to our readiness for it, to our own needs, and to the adjustments we need to make because the beam is only 4 inches wide. The balance is delicate. If we're willing to admit to our own complexity in this way, our questions change. We are allowed to be both more effective and more fulfilled. Hot diggity. For those not called to monastic life, the real work here is to remember, with some measure of regularity, that most all of us benefit from a balance between our attention to cultivating a quieter internal world and working for a more just external world. Presupposing the importance of balance, the question changes from, how do I increase my meditation time from 20 to 40 to 60 minutes, to what can I do to improve my connection with others and my impact on my community? How are my spiritual practices or self-care or soul care, whatever you call it, contributing to those outcomes? The question moves from how soon can I be freed of this or that volunteer task I've taken on that's burning me out, to what can I do to quiet my mind and introduce some stillness to see if that refills my cup or helps me to balance my service with healing. With balance, we learn to stick it out for the long haul rather than swinging from one extreme to the other. And just like our incredibly accomplished Olympian, we will fall. We will get the balance wrong. We will push ourselves too hard from time to time in what we are doing in the world. And most of us get a little stuck in that self-care, peace-seeking space once in a while and forget we're supposed to use all of that good feeling we're generating out in the world. We will fall, hopefully without injury. The trick is to get back on the beam and pay more attention. To keep the story going after the stillness and in spite of the burnout. Moving forward with mindful steps towards a better world and a better experience in it. May it be so. In that spirit, please rise, embody your spirit as